Hello and welcome to the Reverend Hunter Podcast. This is Tony Jones. I'm the Reverend Hunter, joined for the first time ever by Alex.
Yep. New producer. So.
Alex, welcome, man.
Thank you for let me kind of do what Brandon did and come on the podcast.
Yeah,
and hear
dude. So how long have you been at the Talk North Network?
I think this is my either fourth or fifth week. It's all been a blur. We got going pretty quick. So
yeah, you hit the ground running.
Yep.
And did you just graduate from college?
Yes, 2 months ago.
Okay.
In May.
So, and were you just out like applying for jobs or what?
Yeah, so I did all the video stuff. Well, most of the video stuff for the college I went to, Mankato, and our IT person, who's like the head of the department that I worked for, she saw the Facebook post from them and sent it to our group, and I was like, hey, I like the outdoors, and I just found this video passion that I love, so I'm going to apply. I actually applied for a video job on the RSP side.
Okay.
That I didn't get, and then they messaged me, and they're like, hey, we have this new job opening with the podcast, if you want to do it. We have the opening, and now I get to do both.
So you got the podcast job, but then they're also like, oh, yeah, actually you can get the Ron Scherer Productions job too. So you have like two jobs.
Built into one, basically, yeah. So it's not the same job that I applied for, but it's like I can learn more with this instead of being thrown into the fire. So the guy that got the job I applied for has a little bit more experience, which is probably good for them because
Sure.
I had experience, but not a lot of experience. So this is a way for me to build that experience while still getting to do the job and not have as much pressure, I guess, as if I would have been thrown into the fire with the job that I applied for.
Okay. So you're doing some podcasts. How many podcasts are you producing? Because isn't there another producer?
Yes, there's two producers, Davide and Tony.
Okay.
So I produce weekly 5 with Randy Shaver's new show.
Yeah.
And then it'd be 6 with yours monthly.
So Randy Shaver's new show and you're doing video for that, which is a new kind of thing for Talk North, which is great. I mean, he's a TV guy, just retired TV guy here in the Twin Cities.
Yeah, he's been awesome. At first, I was kind of scared because
I
played high school football growing up, and Randy Shaver was a big deal. So
yes.
It was intense, Fresh out of college, I get to meet all these cool people, and I'm like, oh no, what if I mess up?
That's awesome. So you grew up in Watertown. Do you still live there in Watertown, Minnesota, or do you live in the cities?
So I just moved back in with my parents when I graduated. Figured if they let me live there, pay off some student loans without having to pay rent, I might as well.
Okay.
I kind of miss living on my own. I love you, Mom and Dad, if you hear this, but I kind of miss it.
That's quite a commute, though. Out to Watertown, not too bad.
Well, I guess it's 30 minutes. So if I'm in a rush, it kind of sucks. But if I have woken up early enough and I need to be here early, then it's fine.
I mean, Watertown, Minnesota is a nice little town, and I would guess, towns like that. I think I umpire in a lot of these towns, which you and I were just talking about. There's people from the cities moving to little towns like Dundas and St. Bonnie and Watertown, and people like the quality of life. That you can buy a nice house for not too much money. It's a little bit slower pace of life.
It's funny because my girlfriend and I talked about this because she lives in New London, New London Spicer area, which is pretty far out compared to where I live.
Yeah,
and her cousin, I've always kind of considered myself not country, but small town. I grew up in a small town to me. Yeah, it's 30 minutes from the cities, so everything I need is there.
Yeah.
My girlfriend and I were talking about that, and she's like, yeah, but your country is different than our country because you're small town, but most of the people in your small town work in the cities and they go to the cities, and our small town people's everybody here is here, and this is where we have to go for things. And
you don't just run into, if you live in New London, you're not just running into Costco in Eden Prairie, but you could run into Costco in Eden Prairie.
Yeah. Well, we go to St. Louis Park, which is right down.
Oh, that's even
St. Louis Park. That's right down the road. But
yeah.
It's a little weird for me to think about because I'm so used to saying I'm from a small town, but it's kind of
you and John Mellencamp, you can. Yeah, small town. Well, thanks for producing, and we're in the new Talk North studio today, and my guest was Jake Hanson. He's the director of development at Pheasants Forever, and I've known him for a little bit here, and we just have so many connections. So thanks. What'd you think of the first? You just witnessed your first Reverend Hunter podcast.
That was really cool.
You weren't like checking Instagram the whole time?
No, just answering one email.
Oh, that's pretty good. Okay.
But it's been pretty cool listening to your podcast. You know, I've produced 2 so far, and from that first one when you had talked about Brandon, and then the last one where you had interviewed. I forgot his name, but he's
Sam Shepard.
Yes, and he's British, and he had that scholarly article.
Yeah,
it's cool learning about that. You know, I'm not a super spiritual person, but I've started to kind of recently. I've started to kind of drift towards that, and then this podcast fell up on my lap, and I'm an outdoors person, and lately I've felt like I need to appreciate the outdoors more and everything that it has to offer, and I think. Mainly COVID taught me that, but recently...
That's cool. That's cool. Well, I've got a book for you to read. I'll bring you a copy next time I see you. But thanks, and thanks for producing it. And now, listeners, thanks for listening. As always, rate, review, subscribe, and share the Reverend Hunter podcast with your friends. If you like it, let me know. Drop a line. If you're interested in sponsoring, we're always looking for sponsors. So... thanks for listening. Here is my conversation with Director of Development and former Lutheran Camp Director, Jake Hanson. All right. Hey, Jake, thanks for coming on the Reverend Hunter podcast, buddy.
I think this has been a long time coming, Tony. So when I first discovered your podcast, I had this thought, I think someday Tony and I are going to cross paths, and we're going to end up in a studio somewhere.
What were you doing?
We're going to have a conversation.
Were you a youth pastor at the time?
Well,
was this
probably.
Yeah.
You know, how long have you had your podcast officially?
I think I started during COVID sometime. Maybe it's three and a half or 4 years.
It actually, well, I don't know if I should share all this right now because you might be prompting me to tell this story, but that's about the time I was going through some significant discernment and professional, career, faith discernment. So
okay.
So I guess organically, maybe we've just kicked this off in the right way.
Let's just go in the deep end of the pool. Because here was my opening question for you. I was just going to say, it's not even a question, it's just a statement. I hate asking people for money. Hate it. I've been the executive director of at least 2 nonprofits, two nonprofit organizations. And I was terrible at asking people for money. The first one was YouthWorks, which was a youth mission organization, which maybe you're familiar with. And I had to ask people for money to get it off the ground, but then it was all like kids going on mission trips would pay. You know, we didn't have to really raise money. But then I was part of another one called Emergent Village, which was a part of the emerging church movement thing. And then basically we shut it down because I was so bad at asking for money. I was terrible at asking for money. So I just want to know, like, are you sure you discerned correctly? Because now what you do, I mean, you're a director of development is a euphemism for a guy who asks for money.
Yeah, it's quite the title for the guy that, seems to have his hand out. But so can I share a little bit
Please.
about why?
I want to hear it.
I guess the right term would be I'm called to this type of work. And so I grew up in Park Rapids, Minnesota. So that's home for me. And I grew up in a deeply rooted Lutheran family. All right. 3 significant, we'll say, father figures, male figures in my life. My grandfather, who is now a retired pastor. Okay. He served congregations in the Moorhead community, and then also Park Rapids is where he finished off his pastoral career, we'll say. And then my uncle, he was a pastor, a Lutheran pastor in Detroit Lakes, then Walker. Now he's still in Bagley, Minnesota at this time. And then my dad was an outdoor ministry camp director. So he was a Lutheran camp director. So this was just, I was born into this, right?
Yeah.
I spent high school summers working at Bible camp, church camp, in the outdoor ministry world.
Sure.
Lifeguarding, washing dishes.
What camp?
The first camp would have been Camp Emmaus, which was by Monaga, Minnesota.
Okay. I mean, I'm just saying, 'cause some listeners might know. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You know, it's crazy how, well, first of all, outdoor ministry, camping ministry is deeply rooted in kind of the roots of the ELCA church. Not just the Lutheran church, but many church bodies. You know, going to summer camp.
I got a little niece at Trout Lake Bible camp this week. Yeah.
So Dad's a camp director. Grandpa's a pastor. Uncle's a pastor. Spend my summers in high school and college working at summer camp. You know, being a dishwasher to it, being a camp counselor. I have now, I can say years later, I met my wife at summer camp. So it's been this important part of my life.
Yeah.
And my first job right out of college was working at summer camp. It just seemed to be what was flowing through my veins. And I spent 10 years in various, director roles, program director, camp director roles. It was within those spaces where I had these times where I would work with folks, and they had a deep love of what we did at summer camp. And I was working with them in their generosity, right? And so I would be so moved by these stories of why people were giving to support something that was so important in their lives, and they wanted to pass it on to generations. COVID hits in 2020, and at this time, and we'll probably dive a little bit deeper into this, I'm going through this time of, hey, the church, faith life has just been there, right?
Yeah.
Always right in front of my face. And I've never really questioned what's going on. And I've never really questioned why I've pursued this career in outdoor ministry. But I'm feeling this burnout, all right? Because these places have been so formative for me. And I've been so moved by generous people who give gifts to send kids to summer camp because they believe in this mission. But I've also found these places to be quite dramatic, okay? A lot of drama going on in these
drama,
places,
dude.
right?
Oh my gosh.
So these close-knit faith communities,
Yeah.
I mean, awesome experiences around the campfire, guiding canoe trips in the Boundary Waters in these years, and incredible places, incredible experiences, incredible formative experiences for me. But I also find them to be quite dramatic.
I remember a pastor one time asking me, as I was about to take all the middle schoolers on a week of summer camp, like, how do you gauge success for this week of summer camp? And I'm like, if no girls get pregnant, that's a success. That's like,
I suppose,
like a very low bar. Like, nobody gets killed and nobody gets pregnant. And if people like invite Jesus into their heart, great. But let's just have no babies.
And this is like, so now I'm 8, 9, 10 years deep into this, and my job is, as a camp director is just about everything from, hiring staff to recruiting, congregations to send kids to camp, risk management. It's waking up every morning thinking, do I have all 250 healthy people at this camp? Is everybody okay?
Right.
It's just everything. They don't prepare you for that anywhere besides just hands on the job. I find myself exhausted, and not only just because that job is quite tiring.
It's a young person's job.
Not only am I tired of people saying, "Oh, you work at camp," like, "Oh, well, do you have a real job?" And like, that is a real job, right?
Yeah. Or they'd be like, "Oh, it must just be so fun all the time.
Camp,
it's just fun."
Is that year round? Is that? And
yeah.
Anyways, sometimes it becomes dramatic. Just like I would say, many of us would say, the church gets dramatic at times.
No kidding. Yeah.
So I'm exhausted on this. I'm having this time of discernment, and we can pick at this a little bit, but I also am an avid hunter, angler, outdoorsman.
Have been for a long time?
I started when I was 13.
Okay.
And my dad is not a hunter, but my grandfather decided one day it's time for my grandson and I to go hunting together. So 13-year-old boy, 70-year-old grandfather, we take hunter safety together.
Oh, my gosh.
And that fall, we sat together in the deer stand for the first time.
Cool.
I remember this vividly, the first morning with Grandpa. A buck that, in my memory, was massive, right?
Of course.
In reality, as a 13-year-old,
it doesn't matter.
Who knows how big this buck was. And I've got my 30-30 open sight rifle that I had spent time after hunter safety sighting in, practicing. And I take the shot and I miss. The deer takes off. And I never had a chance again the rest of the season with Grandpa to shoot another deer. But that memory is just right there in my mind that I'll never forget, just spending time with him. That was also deer camp with a bunch of Lutheran pastors.
Oh.
There was no hot cocoa. It was black coffee, right? So as a 13-year-old, here I am sipping down black coffee to stay warm. But that's a part of my pastime, right? And I would like to share a little bit about, my upland journey, because that's an important part of where I'm at in my profession. But these times of generosity in the camp setting inspire me to say, you know what? I think there's a passion that I have for the outdoors. It's time to make a career switch. And I decided I'm going to take what I love about the nonprofit world, about generosity, and I'm going to apply that to a career in conservation. So back to your first question, after this long rambling spiel here, Tony, I do have a passion for asking people for money because I believe in the cause so much. And I know the impact that generosity can make. Conservation in 2024 and beyond is going to take the private sector. It's going to take individuals coming together, putting our resources together, being generous to further that cause. That's the only way conservation is going to work into the future. So there's a little bit of a spiel.
No, that's good. That's super interesting. I mean, I really, the one thing I miss about ministry, about youth ministry, is camping, is summer camp. It's the one thing I miss. Now, what we did was I worked at a big church in Edina, and we didn't own our own camp, and we weren't part of a denomination. So we rented Covenant Pines after their season was over, which was right about now when you and I are recording this, is when we would have the camp, which they no longer do because, I'll get to that in a second, but we would do a week of middle school camp. We'd come home. We'd have 2 days off, and then we'd do a week of upper elementary camp and rent a Covenant Pines for like weeks 2 and 3 of August. And it was so great, and it was so fun, and it was super popular. We'd have on camp sign-up day in March, we'd have people in our church parking lot at 5 a.m. lining up because they wanted so badly to get into this camp. So it was also just fun being part of something that was just hot at the time and everybody wanted to be part of. But yeah, dude, the drama. I mean, whenever you get middle school, and we had our counselors were high school and college kids, and then the campers are middle schoolers. I mean, the hormones and the hurt feelings and the poor life choices. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's just, you're putting out one fire after another.
So 2009 rolls around, and my dad had been with this organization for 17, 18 years at this point in time. And this is where the drama peak kind of hit kind of, I would say the peak. And, you put your heart and soul into this career, just like many pastors do, many faith leaders do. And the drama of leadership catches up to him. And in a surprise moment, a board of directors asks Dad to resign. And it's an identity crisis for our family, right? And so it's at the same time, my grandmother. So I said my grandfather was Lutheran pastor. My grandmother had a few months prior had a stroke. So our family is just kind of in shambles at this time. Dad loses his job. Grandma's recovering from a stroke. I am a junior in college at this time, and I have no clue what I want to do. I want nothing to do with outdoor ministry. I'm hurt by that. And I decide, you know what, there's stories of, ministry leaders being called to ministry, right? What is calling you to ministry? There's biblical stories about being called, right? I feel like there was this voice that kept calling me into conservation. So I take this internship with the Department of Natural Resources, and I think, all right, I'm going to follow this still small voice. And I take an internship as an aquatic invasive species researcher. All right. Okay. So I said, I'm gonna forego camp for the first time I can't remember. I mean, we had been part of this since I was 3.
Right.
Had just been there. It's summer without camp. What was going to happen? So take this internship, Tony, and I'm based out of Itasca Park.
Okay.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's not camp, right?
Yeah.
So you start to think like, where's my camp summer girlfriend at? No,
Yes.
I'm by myself, curly leaf pondweed and I
And
are,
Zeebs, yeah. Searching for
zebra
Zeebs.
mussels. Day 2 on the job, we meet the area supervisor in Detroit Lakes to do a lake study. I'm the intern. They said, no, go back the boat in the lake. Well, I do that. Pretty proud of myself. Pull the truck and the trailer up to the parking lot. These DNR guys are there. We get down. We say, okay, are we ready? Yep, everything's good. I got the stuff we need. Get down to the dock, and the boat is half sunk in the lake. I forgot to put the plug in. Yeah.
Oh, no, dude. That is.
And there's
my
just
gosh.
some mishaps that go on.
Yeah.
I long for that community
Yeah.
of outdoor ministry for
Yeah,
the next 3 weeks, to the point where I make this phone call to a friend who is in charge of the Boundary Waters programs up at Voyagers Lutheran Ministry in Cook, Minnesota. And I say, do you have anything? I would come mow your lawns. I just want to be back at camp.
Wow.
They offer me the trail shack coordinator job. Somebody had backed out.
Okay.
So it means I'm going to go pack Boundary Waters food for groups all summer long. And I, on a whim, just go. Quit the internship.
Wow.
Next day, drive up. I'm lost in this discernment. Well, what happens? A canoe guide has to back out in that summer. So I spend most of the summer on trail, guiding trips in the Boundary Waters. Had never been into the Boundary Waters before.
Wow.
And so the story,
Yeah.
when I think about these stories, Tony, I think about how many connections you and I have, parallels in our lives, in these important wild places.
Yeah.
And finding spirituality in these places.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll just want to say that I know that feeling of I miss camp desperately. I mean, something special happens in outdoors ministries. I mean, I wrote about it in my book, taking kids to Colorado, climbing mountains, whitewater rafting through the Royal Gorge. I mean, those are moments that, so much of my years as a pastor, I've completely forgotten. But like those, there are these moments, and they're almost all outdoors at the top of a mountain or in a church camp or doing something like that. So I totally get that. I totally get that, pulling the ripcord on the internship and being like, I need to get back to. But it sounds like then in COVID you had another kind of
I probably should have prefaced the last story with, that was the first of 2 times that I had some major discernment in my life. There was this abrupt change in, my father's position. Financial position.
Yeah.
Does not have a job. Identity. This is what he had committed his life to. This is what our family had been, and all of a sudden just uprooted overnight. And the same thing with what happens after a stroke. Mm-hmm. So I'm having these upset feelings of like, my family's been so dedicated to church, to faith, to ministry. How can this happen to us?
Yeah.
How can this happen to us? So that happens in 2009. Dad gets back on his feet. Life goes on. 2020 rolls around. I had previously, in 2018, moved to Watertown, South Dakota. I'd been in South Dakota since 2015, working for outdoor ministry organizations. So I'm overseeing 2 camps at the time. I start this chapter of Pheasants Forever in Watertown, South Dakota, which was probably by mistake. I made the call to the regional rep and said, I'm getting into the upland hunting. I guess I'm an adult onset upland hunter.
Yeah.
I want to find other people that share this passion. My wife and I just bought a house in Watertown. Could you point me in the right direction? She says, we don't have one. Would you like to start one? No. Which led to starting one, becoming the president.
Okay.
Right? I'm finding this love of upland hunting, bird dogs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm finding this love of conservation, being able to walk through the prairie, which was different from home.
Yes.
And to be able to say, oh, this is the type of, grasses or habitat I'm walking through, this yearning to understand this. So COVID hits, we're working from home. I think I'd really like to go work for who I now work for, Pheasants Forever.
Yeah. Because let's just say, I mean, during COVID, I'm sure the outdoors
Yeah.
and camping, like everything ground to a halt.
We have to shut camps down. And my job then totally reverts to kicking off what essentially is a COVID relief campaign. We don't have
Right.
any revenue coming in from summer camp.
Right.
Just instantly, we're refunding summer camp
Yeah.
registrations.
But still have to pay salaries and
You still-
insurance.
you don't-
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's PPP loans floating around, but we're not sure what's going to happen.
Yeah,
Can we
right.
keep our camps open? So this all reverts to me helping facilitate, put together a COVID relief campaign, which was very successful. People were very empathetic at the time. We were all
Sure.
receiving some stimulus checks.
Sure,
If you didn't
sure.
need them, you often found a place that
Yeah.
did need them. And I decide I'm gonna put myself out there, and I'm gonna apply for a job.
okay.
I was pretty confident in it.
Were you?
I didn't get the job.
This was with PF
This is with PF.
in South Dakota, like a
This
regional
is
job?
a
Or?
national job, right?
Oh, okay.
And so I think to myself, I'm like, there's two ways I could go about this. I could be kind of scorned, be like, nah, I tried it.
yeah.
But there was just this desire. Like I had found this community in the uplands.
Mm-hmm.
I'd found this love of bird dogs. And I was like, I really want to work for that organization. What can I do to be a stronger candidate next time an opportunity opens
Okay.
up? And so I utilized COVID time to enroll in a hybrid program through the University of Denver to finish my master's degree. I had started a master's degree at Augsburg years prior.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, I'm going to go get my master's degree in nonprofit leadership. Find that love of camp,
Nice,
that discernment was like, I love the nonprofit space.
Mm-hmm.
I had found a passion for leading people to be generous towards causes that they love.
Yeah.
And of course, underneath it all is this love of the outdoors.
Yeah.
I'm going to go be a very different type of student here at the University of Denver. I took 2 years to do this program. In the middle of the program, another opportunity opened up with Pheasants Forever. I get the job. So I'm now the South Dakota regional representative at the time. I'm overseeing chapters. I'm finishing up my master's degree. And
what's that job entail? Like putting on banquets?
banquets, working with...
You're not a biologist, so
Nope.
you're not doing... You're
I've got a biology undergrad degree.
okay.
Thus is why that story of working for the DNR, I thought I'd go put that to work.
Right.
I went to Concordia College for that undergrad degree. There weren't a whole lot of, we'll say, fin and feather fur guys. It was a lot of pre-med students, but really cool memories of banding woodcock north of Detroit Lakes, doing lake studies. There weren't many of us, but we were a mighty crew.
Yeah.
So I thought I wanted to put that into practice a few times. But this degree was nonprofit leadership, and then I found an opportunity for my focus point to be natural resource management. And I started as the regional representative, so chapter, volunteer, both recruitment, but also oversight for chapters, helping them put their banquets on. 34 chapters across the state of South Dakota.
I mean, you got the gig as like in the pheasant capital of the world.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like they didn't start you off in Illinois.
The best looking one at the dance, I think. And I, first of all, find this big community of people that I just, resonate with.
Yeah.
I know this isn't the position that I want to be in, and I think everybody knew Jake was going to go somewhere else in the org. About a year after that, I had found opportunities during this time also to do some major gift fundraising. And a year after that, I was elevated to a development officer, major gift officer role. And 1 year after that, here I am, the director of development. So it's been an awesome, fast journey.
Yeah. Fast is right. So I've said this before. Anybody who listens to the podcast knows I love Pheasants Forever. Like I just think I don't know the inner workings or anything, but it just seems so strong and healthy. And I really I support 3 conservation orgs: Rough Grouse Society, which has been through some turmoil and leadership changes and recently.
Not unlike outdoor ministry, right?
Right.
I mean, there's so many parallels here.
And BH, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, which I love and is young and scrappy, but also is kind of back on its heels a little bit right now with a bunch of executive leadership changes and et cetera. And Pheasants Forever, man. I mean, and I'm not talking ill about those two organizations because I still fund them and I think all my listeners should too. But Pheasants Forever is like the F-150, man, that just keeps running. You know, it's like, you know what I mean? It's just built well. It's on a good, it seems like that whole idea of chapter money stays with the chapters and goes into the ground in local ways is fantastic. Plus then, you know, I've gotten to see, well, just like being at the PF banquet the last couple of years and doing the invocation, like this thing is run so well and so professionally. It's just seems to me a very impressive organization.
Well, there's been a constant throughout 42 years of the history of the organization, and that's that grassroots effort where in 1982 it started here in the Twin Cities, concerned upland hunters and conservationists concerned about what they're seeing on the landscape and noticing this correlation between the disappearance of habitat and also the disappearance of pheasants.
Yeah.
The success of the organization still lies in that grassroots chapter model, where local chapters raise dollars. They retain local control of where their dollars are spent, whether that's a national initiative, whether it's a local habitat delivery, whether it's a state level collaborative project. That's the beauty of the whole organization. And now we're going to go over 600 employees within the next few months.
That's incredible.
That's wild.
That is wild. What's the annual budget?
About $100 million.
Holy smokes, dude.
Right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
And so there's so much growth still ahead of us.
Yeah, what do you attribute that growth to? Because pheasant hunting, look, I get it. It's also, you know, it's all upland hunting and it's, you know, quail too. Like I get it. Like but the core is Pheasants Forever. And pheasant hunting is it's a regional deal. It's not like duck hunting, which is international, you know, or even quail. Like there's way more states with quail than pheasants. So what's the magic to PF, you think?
You know, I guess maybe to navigate that answer, I'll think about my own upland journey a little bit. I guess pheasants might have been my gateway drug, right?
Yeah.
Shooting that first pheasant over my first bird dog's point was just like this hook. That led me to say, you know, maybe I should go try prairie grouse. The first time I went out to Wyoming, I knew that was going to be a special hunt chasing sage grouse.
Yeah.
I thought this might be a species that I might see disappear in my lifetime.
Yeah, right.
Unless there's something significant that happens. So this isn't going to be an every year trip. This is pretty cool. But the first time I stepped in that sagebrush steppe landscape, I had that aha moment of, okay, now I kind of get this. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. This ecosystem needs me.
Yeah.
As an upland hunter, as a conservationist. Those are also the places that remind me of my interconnectedness in creation. And I think I'll hit on that here in our conversation.
But I want to hit on that, but before we get there, I want to just say, like, then now, what's a day look like for you as director of development at Pheasants Forever? Like, what day in, day out, or week in, week out? What kind of stuff? What kind of conversations are you having? Do you travel a lot? Who are you sitting in meetings all the time? What do you do?
Yeah, well, and there are folks all over the country with that same passion of I love pheasant hunting in South Dakota, but I also love rough grouse hunting in Michigan, or I love quail hunting in Georgia. I mean, when you are in South Dakota, which you are often, Tony, you'll see all the different license plates that show up there, right? The busiest day in the airport in Sioux Falls is the day before pheasant season. There's just this love of uplands, and I think it's bigger than just the bird. I think it's the community, it's the tradition. My day-to-day work, I got a lot of flack from folks because I moved from South Dakota
Yeah.
to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Why would you leave the best pheasant hunting in the world, arguably? Well, my work now is leading a team of major gift fundraisers that work with generous folks all across the country. Many of those folks don't live right in South Dakota.
Right.
They might live on the coast. They might live in the southeast. But I have a team of right now about 10 development officers, major gift officers that I oversee. And really what my role is as a director, and we've got these steps of leadership, right? I am in the middle. Okay. And my job really is setting my team up for success. In some ways, I'm the coach. Preparing them, well, I guess I could say this, probably on a daily basis, I give my team all of the information that I spent about $60,000 on a master's degree on, in identifying qualification, cultivating, how to make an ask, and what to do after somebody is generous, and stewardship efforts.
Okay.
So I help build out development plans, and then unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, I also have to be the boss.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
keeping folks accountable is an important part of the role too.
Right. So your team, people on your team must have goals they're trying to hit. And
the way that Pheasants Forever functions, you've got that local mission delivery, right? So chapters are raising money. They're determining how to spend the money. But when you're a $100 million organization with 600 employees, you also have a ton of national and state level programs that we deliver, whether it's, build a wildlife area program with land acquisition and permanently protecting habitat, opening up to public access. Might be our legislative action fund. It might be a special public access program in a certain state. But those programs depend on individual giving, corporate philanthropy, foundational giving. Yeah. So that's what my team does. They dabble in the working with generous individuals, families, help assist the corporate partners group, work with foundations across the country. Each one has a work plan goal that's based on the budgetary need.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now to shift gears a little bit to the more spiritual side, if you're ready for that. I'll tell you, for me, I will also say, reflecting back on the situation with your dad, just before we came in here to the Talk North International Global Studios to record, I had lunch with the pastor of my home church. I had not talked to him in probably 3 years. And he was my youth pastor. He's been at the church for 39 years. And man, he is beat up. Yeah. Got to be contemplating retirement. We didn't really talk about that, but got to be just beat up. The church is struggling. It's smaller. Some staff have left, which has caused people to question his leadership. It's just a hard gig. And so a lot's changed since I left ministry, since I really left ministry. And I don't miss that part. I don't miss getting beat up. But I'll tell you what else, and I'm just throwing this out there and asking you, you can take this wherever you want, but my faith didn't really evolve till I left ministry, because I had so much investment, obviously, in the message, because I was running an organization, and we had to say the right things so the money would keep coming in and the pews would still be full and things like that. I couldn't really see the forest for the trees when I was in ministry, and I was in a church setting, not like a camp ministry setting so much like you. But I wonder, since you left the ministry world, how your faith has evolved and how your new role has affected that.
Part of the discernment in 2020 was this thought process of, as I'm leading a faith community in these outdoor ministry settings, as I'm asking people to support this, not only with their time and their prayer and their financial resources, man, am I wholeheartedly invested myself in this? I start questioning. I mean, this has been just in front of me forever. There's so many. I have played "Blessed Be the Lord" on my guitar around the campfire thousands of times, and I start thinking, like, wait a sec, am I also finding fulfillment in this? I start questioning that, and discerning that.
Because you're good at it. You're good at it. Like you knew the chord. You could play that song in your sleep. I knew all the songs too. Like I knew how to get up there and lead the group and get everybody fired up. But you do have those. You lie awake in bed in the middle of the night and like, do I really believe this?
Right.
Stuff that I'm.
So I dedicate this career to filling everyone else's cups through these unique outdoor ministry experiences, and I realize my cup either has a hole in it or it's just not being filled. And I have this realization where I am finding my own mountain, sometimes literally mountaintop experiences in the outdoors. In those moments of sitting with my grandfather in a deer stand for the first time, in those moments of taking my bird dog out into the field. And I think, can I find fulfillment spiritually? Can I find a connection to something higher than me that's outside of the church camp or maybe outside of the sanctuary? And I start to find myself drifting further and further away from those places and closer to finding that fulfillment in the uplands, in the deer, at deer camp. Yeah. And I think I found an old journal entry from a year and a half ago after Tony had reached out to say, would you have a conversation? I usually take a journal to the deer stand.
Okay.
I've got buddies that hunt with me that are pretty serious about, you don't do anything in the deer stand but pay attention.
Right.
I'm like, I've got a book, I've got a little lunch pail. Like
I know I gotta always have one AirPod in listening to an audiobook and the other ear listening for
usually I'm listening
Hooves
to
on Leaves.
Packers games or Twins baseball. But I had written just a couple of journal entries. This was a couple of years ago in archery season, and one of those had said, I believe my spiritual connection to the outdoors is 3-dimensional. There's 3 parts to this. And I said, so the 3Ds that I've identified are, that first dimension is, of course, the creation dimension, right? These fantastic places that I find this awe and inspiration in. Whether it's the sagebrush steppe, whether it's the pine savannas of Georgia chasing quail, whether it is the Black Hills in early spring, listening to Miriam turkeys gobble, whether it's seeing a giant whitetail on my family's farm. I mean, these are mountaintop experiences for me, this connection, and also this reminder of being interconnected in all of this, harvesting what we eat, in this way, whether it's pheasants or turkeys or deer. I mean, this connection to what's nourishing me. So this creation dimension is here. And then the second dimension in this 3D connection is the human dimension. The communities that I've found myself within, hunting and fishing and on Boundary Waters trips, those traditions, those evenings around the campfire talking about the day, what you saw in the woods that day. Or do you remember that shot that this guy missed? Usually I am that guy that missed. That human dimension part of it is definitely part of my spiritual connection to the outdoors. Emily and I started writing on the bags, the vacuum seal bags of any game birds that we get, who was with us that day. So before we put the meat in and stick it in the vacuum sealer, we'll write the day, the location, and who was with us.
Wow, great
so
idea.
that when we can pull that out of the freezer, we have these moments of like, okay, that was that day Brian fell into the creek. Remember that?
So cool. Right? Great idea.
So that human dimension. And then what's happened over the last few years is that the third dimension, my 3D spiritual connection, is the canine dimension.
I was just going to say the dog dimension.
I have 2 bird dogs at home. the first bird dog, Jep is his name. He's 7.5.
Good name. Yeah.
It cost me 2 days in a tree planter in northern Minnesota to get that dog. I struck a deal with my uncle,
Okay.
the Lutheran pastor, who owns the property at the confluence of the Fishhook and the Straight River just south of Park Rapids. He was planting red pine and white pine, called me, asked me to come up. He drove the tractor. I sat in the back of the tree planter. And the deal was, if I did that for him and got all 2,500 trees in the ground, he would pay for my first bird dog.
Oh, my gosh.
So I left with
I'll
the
take
check,
that deal
right?
7 days a week.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I left with the check, excited, not knowing what I was getting myself
Yeah,
into by any
yeah.
means. Had never had pointers before.
Yeah.
Grew up with family labs that really weren't hunters at all. And that was fast. We're best friends. I mean, I haven't gone through, and I thought about this in your book a couple of times, Tony. I have not gone through what many bird hunters have, and all will, that have dogs, what happens at the end of the life of a bird dog.
Yeah.
I went through that with our family pets, but it is something that
Different.
I
It's
am
different.
still green in behind the ears on that area of life.
Yeah.
And I thought about that often. I would find myself pausing reading your book thinking, it is going to be really difficult for me when that time comes, and it will come.
Yeah.
Right? We added a second short hair to the mix. My wife and I don't have children. They're spoiled just like kids. And now we have this dynamic duo. And just shameless plug here, if you got the Summer Pheasants Forever magazine, that was my dog on the cover. So
Oh, nice.
we're pretty proud of that.
That's fantastic.
So that canine connection, I struggle upland hunting without him. So if I go with a group,
Yeah.
the dogs don't come with me, or I go on a hunt at a lodge, stewarding donors, I'm left seeking fulfillment when I don't have my dogs with me.
Oh my gosh, that I don't know why you wouldn't bring your dog
Right,
even to a
exactly.
game farm, dude. I bring
Sometimes, yeah, it's a game farm. Or
I bring
something
my
like
dog
that.
fly fishing with me. Yeah,
Oh
it goes
man,
everywhere. Yeah.
they really. I mean, today is a rare day. They're not out here in the parking lot with me.
Oh,
They're with my wife at home. But that canine dimension of this finding spirituality in the outdoors is such an important one too.
well, you haven't completely left the youth ministry world because you just gave a 3-point talk. So
I did a 3-point talk. I know.
You
I know.
that's hard to shake. That's hard.
That'll
to shake.
always be part of
That's good. I love
part
it.
of me.
Yeah. So tell me about what you've got. What are you looking forward to this fall?
So this fall is going to kick off. I'll be spending a couple weeks right away in North Dakota.
Okay.
Then, because of where we're at now, just outside of Eau Claire, Wisconsin, it just doesn't make sense for me to buzz back home. So I'm going to spend about 10 days in North Dakota. Then I'll go to South Dakota right after. And then I'll buzz back up to North Dakota. And these are experiences. A little bit is fun on the side, personal, getting the dogs out there. A lot of it has to do with working with donors, working with staff, hosting fundraising events along the way.
Okay.
I've got a pretty neat hunt in South Dakota at the end of September. An individual had reached out, one of our supporters.
Mm-hmm.
He's on a mission to chase every upland bird species, in the continental United States. He's got some pretty cool species, notches on his belt, but he doesn't have a prairie chicken. So we get to go chase that one together out in the Fort Pierre grasslands.
Nice.
And then I'm excited because this is the first fall that we have been living in Wisconsin, and I'll be spending quite a bit of time chasing ruffed grouse and woodcock.
Nice.
Yeah, which is a different change of pace.
You hear from people sometimes who work for conservation organizations or guys who around here put on, TV shows about hunting, like, oh my gosh, that's the dream job. You must get to hunt all the time. And then you often hear back from, I remember talking to Howard Vincent about this, like, I wish I could hunt more, but I'm, running in $100 million organization or whatever. So, but it sounds like you do get to. It's work, but you're also out there in the field.
Try to maximize. This is a Jake lesson on the development team: is maximize your time on the road.
Gotcha.
One of those things that I work with our team on is, hey, when you make a trip, try to fill it with as many meetings as possible. And so I try to maximize my time on the road. If all of a sudden I've lined up a meeting with a donor on Monday and my next one is across the state on Wednesday, I'm going to do something cool Tuesday on my way out there.
Yeah.
Maximizing that time on the road. One thing with folks in this industry, I didn't realize this coming in. Tony, you probably know about this, but I think we get into these hunting seasons and we're so busy.
Yeah.
We're with people. We're with people over here and we kind of seek that time, just us and our own dogs.
It's hard.
We hold those days sacred.
It's hard because I know. I know what you're talking about. And that tends to be for me duck hunting, because not as many people I know are like to duck hunt, or they got pointers or whatever. So I do get to bang around Crow Wing County by our cabin and duck hunt alone. But yeah, the upland hunting, I'm usually the guy organizing the group, and it's everything. Did we pay for the lodge, and who's in charge of this meal, and which farm are we going to hunt first? It's a lot.
It's not that we're antisocial. It's just those days are less frequent than the other ones with groups. Can I throw the same question towards you? What do you got going on this fall?
Oh my gosh. It's funny because this pastor I had lunch with today, well, first of all, I'll say this. He texted me a couple of weeks ago. He said, "Hey, can we have breakfast?" I was like, since I quit being a pastor, I don't do breakfast meetings. You know what I mean? Like, I wake up, I work, I write, then I go to the gym. I'm like, I'm free from noon. I'm like, we can have lunch or we can meet for happy hour. I knew he didn't drink, so we weren't going to meet for happy hour. So he asked me to he said, would you speak at our men's breakfast? I'd read your book. I really liked it. Would you come speak at our men's breakfast? It's on a Saturday in November. And I'm like, yes, I'd love to do it. No, there's no Saturday in November that is available. Like I'm booked. I didn't get a bear tag in Minnesota. I didn't get an antelope tag in Wyoming.
That's a lot of rejection letters hitting me.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of rejection letters in life, so I'm totally used to it. So it'll be duck hunting, pheasant hunting, grouse hunting, deer hunting. From mid-September through the end of January. I like to go to South Dakota in January because nobody else is there, and I love hard hunts. For me, especially upland hunting, the harder the hunt, the better. I like it. Like snow, cattails, brutal conditions. That is my jam. That's like my favorite thing.
I feel like when I got here today, I picked that up from some of the folks that were out in the lobby when they kind of
we did film an episode
to
of
if you want to go hunt with Tony Jones.
It was probably the episode of The Flush where the least birds that have ever been killed on an episode of The Flush. I think there was one episode where they didn't kill any birds, but they were probably in Alaska or something. They've never been to South Dakota and only had like 3 birds shot. So, yeah, that's what I've got going. 2 more questions before we go. First, do you find in the conservation world that you're able to have conversations about spirituality and faith, whatever that looks like for you these days? Because it's been interesting for me. I've gotten some, I have a book come out and a lot of people are like, I don't really do religion. I don't do spirituality. Like I do conservation. And I've tried to make the case, and I've had other people who are very receptive, like Bob St. Pierre, having me on his podcast, your podcast, the PF podcast, to talk very openly about my book and my spiritual journey and things like that. And same at BHA. Hal Herring had me on and was very open to it. Others have been a little more standoffish. So do people ever like, oh, you come out of the ministry world, that's weird? Or how have you integrated that in the conservation world?
That's a really good question. That's a cool question. I don't get asked often. This what we would call sector. It's not like we're gonna. Well, maybe some folks do, but it's not very much. Hey, let's get together and talk about scripture. Let's open up our Bibles.
Yeah, there's no morning Bible study at the PF headquarters, probably.
But I will say this: there are so many folks that I've met in this space, in the conservation space, that have this deep love and appreciation for wild places based on these transformational experiences that they've had. And I think folks draw these connecting the dots lines to say there's something about this that's bigger than just me in all of this, in these experiences. And there was a cool experience I had last December with a family who had made a significant contribution towards a land acquisition project. And this project was then named after their late father. So I work with his widow and his daughter in this project, and we do a private family dedication for this land.
Okay.
They've been part of this. Their gift inspires another $550,000 raised. So they kick in the first 150, and we raise 700,000. We buy this property. Pheasants Forever does. It's turned over. It's in the process of that right now, but turning over to South Dakota Game Fish and Parks for management. It's known as the John Stengel Tract of the Frozen Man Creek Game Production Area. A mouthful.
Yeah.
We have this private family dedication. They don't really talk to me about John's faith life. I mean, it just never naturally comes up. But at this dedication, they start talking about how important these memories together on public land as a small family have been, just for their family's well-being. These memories that they have of their dad, taking them pheasant hunting, taking them duck hunting, wherever that might be. And then 3 of the people in this group. So I've got John's widow, Karen, his daughter, Nicole, and then close family friends and family members. 3 of them pull out tubes of John's ashes.
Wow.
Nobody had coordinated that together.
Yeah.
They are all surprised. And now 3 people are holding these tubes. And I'm sitting there as the PF, fundraiser guy. I got to put my sunglasses on because I'm getting teary-eyed.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm crying in front of strangers right now. And everybody has this moment in time where they realize, like, this is where our church is right now in the outdoors. This is what this is how we want to honor and keep the memory of John alive. And this is what he wanted his legacy to be.
Yeah.
We proceed after this very moving ceremony to then get in a line because we were going to hunt this property.
Oh, wow.
So there's 12 of us, and this is a group that's like just outside of like my comfort zone of size. Like
I've been there.
I'm there. I'm cool with it. Big groups, but it's not my preference. We walk half this property and nothing gets up. We turn the corner on the back half of this thing, and 100 prairie chickens.
Oh my gosh!
In this cloud get up. It's late season. Prairie grouse hunting is difficult at times. They're all grouped up typically, and there's a lot of eyes looking around. So they tend to be flighty. We proceed to shoot 1 bird out of the 100. But somebody says, that one's for John.
Oh, wow.
John was with us here on this hunt.
Awesome.
And those are the experiences that I've had. That's as close to talking about faith as I might get here.
Yeah.
But hey, you got to admit, there's a reason we've asked you, Tony, to do the, to come and pray for us before the National Pheasants Forever banquet.
Yeah.
Because faith life, I think, is important to our constituents.
I think so too. And
Faith is still well and alive, whether we talk about it or not, or we kind of keep quiet about it.
Yeah, like I've said to Bob and Chris in prepping to give that invocation at the banquet, there's a way to be sacred without being sectarian. Like it doesn't have to be a real Jesus-y prayer or, in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost or something like that. But you can still make it sacred without narrowing it down to one particular tradition. That's not always easy, and not everybody's good at that, but I mean, it's what I try to do. Okay, last question before we go. Say there's somebody out there listening and they got just a wad of money burning a hole in their pocket. How do they get a hold of you or one of your officers, or how do people go about that?
The beauty of Pheasants Forever, and I think this is why this organization continues to grow, is that what my team will do, if you're someone that's thinking based on my interests, based on my passions, I really want to give back. We work with a lot of people also that say, based on my tax needs, I need to give back. But whatever is your motivator, there's an opportunity for you to help, first of all, inform us of what your vision is. And then we get to come back and say, here's where our mission might meet where your vision is. Mm-hmm. Let's see what we could do together. And to get a hold of me, well, let me finish with this, Tony. I do fly often in this new role.
Sure.
When I fly on a plane, I am definitely the guy that likes to put the headphones on.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I do not want to talk.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what it is about that. And I was on a plane recently, and as soon as I look at who my seatmate is, before I even sit down, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a talker. And I think, oh boy. So sure enough, this gentleman is talking, asking all sorts of questions. And I'm like, I don't want to be the jerk here and not ask questions. So I'm asking questions, and I realize this hour-and-a-half flight is now going to be just us talking. He said the most profound thing to me after this conversation as we were about to get off. And after finding out what I did as a profession, working in the nonprofit space, he said, there are organizations in which my wife and I every year support. Mm-hmm. And he said, I've been very successful in my business endeavors. I have made some purchases in my life that I regret. I regret, a couple of the boats I've bought. And I regret the side-by-side that I recently bought without permission. But he said, I have never regretted being generous in my life to causes in which I love. And I think that is true in this conservation space.
I like that.
There are opportunities to be generous, to make a tangible impact. Mm-hmm. And I'll reiterate that in the organizations that Emily and I support, and we support many of the same, Tony.
Mm-hmm. I should have said also Sportsmen for the Boundary Waters.
Yes.
Sorry, I left that out.
We have a deep love for everyone you've mentioned on this recording so far. We've never regretted being generous.
Yeah.
Some days we think, oh, the automatic gift came out. But I've never said, well, geez, I would like a refund for that.
Yeah.
It's putting that treasure where our heart is.
Yeah.
And so our major gifts team, you can find our information out on the Pheasants Forever employee directory link on the website. And my email is jhanson, JHANSON @pheasantsforever.org.
Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. And I think you're right. We have lots of parallels. I'm sure we'll continue this conversation both on mic and off mic in years to come. So thanks for coming on.
I appreciate it. I hope this is the first of many.
I hope so. Yeah.
Thanks, Tom.